Hi everyone, my name is Ashley and I am an attorney and a disability advocate. Today I'm discussing a topic that is a tad delicate and it has a tendency to get political, but I'm not discussing it in the context of a political debate. It's important for me, however, to address this topic in a meaningful way because it's something that we're continuing to see pop up in the media, and it's important for people with and people without disabilities to understand how they might be falsely internalizing the issue at hand. I'm also going to provide a couple of resources for you to learn more about this in a interesting and in an entertaining way, if you so desire. Okay, so today's topic is about the news story that I saw this morning regarding a mother who is suing for wrongful birth for the birth of her child with Down syndrome. The legal premise for her lawsuit is that had the parents known that the child would be born with Down syndrome, they would have had an abortion. Obviously, this is a very emotional topic for many. I don't have Down syndrome, but I have had a best friend that had Down syndrome. I've taught students with Down syndrome, and I've counseled adults with Down syndrome as well. First and foremost, I cannot emphasize this enough. Any assumption you're being told about your child who has Down syndrome is not fact. Many medical professionals still make comments about how newborn babies with Down syndrome will never get married, never become parents, never work full-time, and never live on their own. I've seen those statements debunked time and time again. And I cannot emphasize enough how damaging these statements are, not only to the parents, but to that child as they age. People with Down syndrome are capable of living independently. They're capable of working part-time or full-time. They're capable of having healthy, meaningful relationships, getting married, and for some, becoming parents. They are voters, they're in many different career fields, and they are leaders. And it's absolutely essential that we listen to their voices on this matter because they really are the experts on that more than I am. But I just want to start off by stating that we as a society have mistreated people with disabilities forever. And institutionalization was a real problem and an assumption for many people with disabilities, but especially for people with Down syndrome. And this happened not that long ago. I'm talking like a handful or less of decades. The 1970s and 80s. To children, that might seem like a really long time ago. But I was born in 1988, and it's scary how frequent in our human history those ideas were spread. And it's something that we're still trying to correct in the media, in our communities, and in these kind of bullheaded doctors that refuse to see the potential in children with Down syndrome. If you are pregnant, if you have found out that there's a chance you might have a child with Down syndrome, if you've given birth to a child with Down syndrome, I want to provide you some comfort. Nobody can predict your child's potential, but they are certainly capable of so much more than our society has given them credit for. The possibilities are endless, and with accessibility and adaptive and assistive technology and different career fields and exploration and advances in special education, the future is only going to get brighter and brighter for people with disabilities and people with Down syndrome. But we still need to advocate with them on this issue now. Separately, if you're interested in learning more about this, my favorite author, Jodi Picoult, Jodi as she's known around my apartment, she wrote this amazing book called Handle with Care. It's one of my favorite books, and it really dives deeply into the reasons and feelings a parent has during one of these lawsuits, and also the reasons and feelings that the child has as a child who has grown up knowing about such a lawsuit. And it also gives the perspective of a medical doctor. It's very intentional and thorough and well written. So definitely check that out if you're interested in learning more. There are motives that a parent might have for entering such a lawsuit, even though they absolutely love their child. It's no secret that, especially in the US, it's very expensive to live with a disability. And unfortunately, when certain individuals are desperate to provide the best care and education and living environment for their child with a disability, this is a legal recourse that they might be able to use. Now, there hasn't been a lot of success with such cases in the US, but it's an issue that I see arising more and more in the future. So check out Jodi's book, but another really the most valuable resource that I can provide to you all is to listen to people in the Down syndrome community. Frank Stevens gave a poignant, eloquent testimony to Congress about why he, as a man living with Down syndrome, has a life worth living. Again, I'm not getting into the pro-choice or pro-life debate, but Frank's statements are true no matter what side of the aisle you find yourself on. The biggest issue is the false notion that abortion should be an assumption if you find out that your child has a high likelihood of having Down syndrome. That's damaging, and it's based in prejudice that goes back decades. And it's something that Frank speaks on better than I ever could. So I highly recommend you find his video. It's like all over YouTube. I'm sure you can find it on Instagram and elsewhere. And check out my other video on what I wish people understood about people who have Down syndrome. I'm happy to engage in respectful commentary below, but again, please keep it respectful. It is my personal belief that people who have Down syndrome should not be presumed unworthy of life. And that's about as far as I'm willing to go in this political conversation right now. But I am so saddened by the way the media has handled this issue as well. They've used people with disabilities, and politicians and political groups have used the experiences of people with disabilities to further their own agendas without providing any type of support outside of that political arena to that population. And we need to make sure that people with disabilities are heard and listened to no matter what. Let me know what you think below, but please be kind. Thanks.